Am I on? Testing, 1, 2. Yes, I'm on. All right, let's get everybody's attention, please. Let's get on with what we're going to be doing today. If we have people out in the hallways, bring them in. Bring them in from the hallway of sin. So, what happens, we get out in the hallways and we start visiting, and it's a good thing to do. I hate breaking up the visits because they're always so beneficial. One of the cool things of having a family like this is you can catch up and just chat. I mean, it's good to hang together, but we got to get into some stuff today. Let's pray and we'll get started on our thing. Hope everybody's got your handout. I want to get into debt management today and how to handle that portion of our lives. Father, love you. Thank you for Jesus. What he does for us, that he paid the debt. Jesus paid it all to him I owe. Now that doesn't mean that we get away with not paying our bills, but Lord, we love you and thank you for what Jesus did for us on the cross. Lead us by your Spirit today through some things that will help us practically in our lives, help us to manage this portion. It's vital in our lives. Of our lives very, very wisely according to your word. Love you and thank you in Jesus' name. Amen and amen. Okay? Let me get briefly, if I can, as I have very limited time today, give you some of my qualifications for having this particular topic on our radar today. Before I got into the ministry, I spent nearly 20 years in credit management, commercial and consumer both, various different aspects and companies. My job for 20 years was to get people into debt and then figure out a way to try to get them out of it. Okay, cleaning up my mess afterwards. And so I spent a lot of time doing that, seeing what debt does to people, seeing the benefits of using it at times, and the downside of it on most cases like that. I spent some time with Nationwide Papers here in Kansas City, which is a division of Champion International, Fortune 100 company. Worked with Palm Beach Menswear in Cincinnati for a number of years, another Fortune 100 company. Those were in commercial areas. With Palm Beach, I was there in the early 80s, and I put together a deal for Dillard's at the time. Dillard's at that time was just kind of a regional store based out of Little Rock, and in the early 80s I put together a deal with them for a $2 million credit line. I remember collecting my first $1 million check back in the 80s. That's when $1 million was worth something, not like today. So spent some time in that area. Corporate, consumer-wise as well. Some of the older people here will remember a company here in town called Kriegel's Jewelers. I was their corporate credit manager for a time. So giving credit out to people coming into jewelry stores, that's not necessarily an essential of life in most cases, so I had to deal with a lot of that as well. In my early years, I spent roughly about 3 years, almost the bulk of 3 years in my automobile, driving around all over the country. Visited 32 different states, collecting money from local independent businesses, little small mom and shop places, trying to chase them down. Was always a real treat. And some of them out in the boonies, some of them in the heart of the hood in Atlanta and Milwaukee and Chicago and places like that. So have plenty of experience in getting people into debt, getting them out of debt. Okay, so I want to take you through this to help you understand how to manage this particular aspect of your life. The typical budget that an individual has in life. Now, Larry gave you a couple of weeks ago a detailed budget with a whole bunch of different line items on it, and that was awesome. But let me summarize that for you if I could. And again, you have up on the screen there, you've got your debt management key verse, the rich ruleth over the poor, the borrower is servant to the lender. Nowhere in the Bible does God directly and specifically condemn borrowing per se, but he does give principles on how it's to operate. It's supposed to be rare, and realize that when you do, you become the servant of the individual that you've borrowed money from. And the Bible tells us we're not to be servants of men, but to be servants of the Lord Jesus Christ. So it's it's an aspect of our life that is necessary at times, and it's greatly, widely abused in the world that we live in today. If you have your home budget set up in the basic main categories this way, 10% of your money goes to giving. That's the tithe that Larry talked about, okay? 10% of your money goes into savings. You set it aside for the rainy day. 40% of your budget would be the roof over your head. A mortgage company will not qualify you for more than 25% of your pay for a mortgage, for your monthly payment on your mortgage, okay? And then the other 15% takes care of utilities and other things like that that are necessary to keep the roof over your head. 20% for short-term retirable debt. When I say short-term retirable debt, that's things you could pay off within 2 to 3 to 5 years. Not your mortgage, because that's 30 years out or 20 years out, or however long you've signed up for that. We're talking about car payments, credit cards, furniture loans, whatever those kind of things that people do. And then 20% of your budget for what I call discretionary, and that is your running money for day-to-day food, gas, things you got to have to keep life going, okay? So if your budget does that, I gave you in your notes there the annual take-home pay of $60,000. If that's your monthly $5,000 a month, and again, that's for comparison purposes. Some of you are less than that, some of you much more than that, whatever it is. If an individual if you're bringing in $5,000 a month, you would tithe $500, you'd take $500, put it into a savings account, you'd have a $1,250 mortgage or rent, you'd spend about $750 for your utilities and insurance, $1,000 on your car payments and credit cards, and then $1,000 on the food, gas, entertainment, all that kind of stuff. If an individual did that all of his life, if he lived his life that way all of his life, you'd be okay. You would make it just fine because what this does, that type of budget covers what I call the big three. There are three main aspects of handling finances that are absolutely essential for our life. I like to keep things simple. I like to keep it in a way that we can grab it, understand what it is. Those three big things. Number one is to make sure that you're honoring God with what he has blessed you with, okay? And so that comes off of the top, and if you're doing that, then Malachi says he'll rebuke the devourer for your sakes. And I can't explain this, but I know that it's true. And somebody will take this and, of course, make a big deal out of it if they wanted to. Those who consistently give in their offering to the work of the Lord Jesus Christ, their cars last longer, their washing machines last longer. I can't explain that to you, but I know that it's true, okay? So that's number one on the big three. The other two are just right behind it, and that is the individual who lays aside some money for life. Is not static, it's dynamic. It does this constantly. Life is a roller coaster. You'll be up and you'll be down. That's just the way life is, and if you don't prepare for those down hits with some money set aside, that's going to stress your budget to the point where you can't handle things. So you're giving, you're laying money aside to take care of those things, and the money that you lay aside to take care of those things ultimately over time will turn into what you use to live off of when you get to be this age, okay? And then the third item is an individual or a family who lives within their means. If you can do that, if you will give consistently, faithfully, every time you get paid, something touches the offering plate. Every time you get paid, something gets set aside for that rainy day. And then the rest of it, you live within your means and not beyond your means. If you do those three things, you'll make it in life just fine. Okay? Now, when I lay that out for you, I have put 20% into this as far as retirable debt. And Dave Ramsey is now screaming. He's rolling over in his grave. He's not dead yet. Okay? He's saying, what are you doing, moron? Why? I'm doing everything I can to try to get people out of debt, and you're telling them that it's okay to have 20% of your income set aside for car payments and credit cards and other things. You're out of. Take a breath for a minute. Hang on, Dave. I'll get to you. Okay. That's where I said somebody who consistently does this all of their life is going to do fine in this economy and the way that we live right now. However, that's very difficult to accomplish. Because we have the flesh, and the flesh is driving these things. And an individual who conditions himself to have debt, well, it's a car payment. Well, how much per month? Well, yeah, I know we can't afford this right now, but we really want it, so let's go ahead and put it on a credit card. I know we can't afford this right now, but we're down at the Furniture Mart. We'd really like to have some new living room furniture, so let's go ahead and sign up the deal, and we'll pay. As long as that stayed within 20% of your income and other things were done as well, you could manage that, and it would be fine, and you could make it. However, those areas of life become a cancer to the budget. It's incredibly difficult for somebody to do that all through their life, because what it conditions you to do is to attain now and pay later. And the attain now and pay later is driven by the flesh. It's not driven by faith. We walk by faith and not by sight. And what happens during those times is that you then don't learn what Philippians 4 verse 11 says, okay? And that is that I have learned in whatsoever state I am therewith to be content. And Paul said that while he was in jail. Having food and raiment, let us be there with content. So if you got food in your belly and something to cover keep you from exposure to the elements, you're okay. Okay? But what happens is we want what we want, and we want it now, and so we'll pay for it later. And in doing so, that the flesh cannot be satisfied. And what will happen, and is well, not me, hopefully not, maybe not, but if that's the case, you would be the incredibly rare exception to the rule that makes it through life with this 20% of your income going to take care of the things that you want to put on time payments and stuff. So what happens is that begins to grow. And not only does the debt begin to grow, then you've conditioned yourself to want things now. So well, let's just go out to eat. That'll be fine. And we can do 3 movies a week instead of just one. Or let's hit this vacation spot because that will be cool. And that discretionary area of your life will grow in concert with the debt area that grows in your life. And now you have a problem. If you listen to Dave Ramsey on a regular basis, which you should, I highly encourage it. The man is awesome in what he presents to us, okay? But if you listen to him very carefully, you will note there are many, many times in which Dave handles an issue to correct people's behavior more than he does their mathematics. There's times in which he says, well, do it this way. Mathematically, that's probably not the best way to do it. But what he's trying to do is condition people to behave themselves in a different way with their budget. And so when I put out that 20% for debt things in your life, what that does is condition people to behave in a certain way. And once you're conditioned to behave in that way, it's going to grow. And that cancer in your budget is eventually going to grow and begin to eat things. And so when the 20% of debt grows to 25, The discretionary will grow to 25 as well. Then they both grow to 30. Guess what they're going to start eating? The first thing that will do is it will eat at your giving. Well, I can't afford to tithe because I have all this debt now. And when that happens, then you put God on your against you as opposed to for you. And so people that I have worked with over the years that have had financial problems, I've said to them this: you cannot go to God and say, God, please help me with this financial situation, if you don't put him first in it. And so what happens is this debt grows, the discretionary grows, and you get to the point where that 10% of giving starts getting choked out. And then the 10% of savings gets choked out. So now you've stretched the rubber band so tight that when this happens in life, ping, and now you've got a serious problem because you don't have the money reserved to take care of the ups and downs of life when something might happen where the washing machine goes out. Because washing machines for tithers last longer than washing machines for non-tithers, right? Okay? So that's what happens. Now that area begins to eat in your life. And ultimately and eventually, you know that cancer always grows. And you know that cancer will eventually, if it's not treated, will kill the patient. And once it eats away the 10% of giving, then it eats away the 10% of savings, then it starts eating into that 40% of household income, and that's when somebody is calling me saying, hey, our lights are getting shut off. Can the church help us out? That's how that happens. And that's why, and this makes no sense until you look at it this way, but that is why it is easier and more beneficial to live on 80% of your income than it is on 100%. Now that makes no sense secularly. It makes no sense to the people out there in the world because they don't look at it the right way. So I'm going to put 10% in the plate. I'm going to put 10% aside someplace into a savings that I will use early in my life to take care of the ups and downs, but that will eventually get to the point where it will start growing. We'll talk about investments and things like that next week. Well, that will begin to start growing to the point when I get to retirement age, I'll at least have a little bit more than my Social Security sitting there, okay? So how do we handle budget? How do we deal with getting out of this cancerous situation that is put into our lives because of debt? How do we prevent it to start with? Let's talk about that first. How do we prevent budget cancer? First thing to do to get rid of budget cancer is get rid of the short-term debt. Now I say that, I wave the magic wand, poof, it goes away. Sometimes it takes people a long time to do that. And again, if you've listened to Dave a number of times, you know he's got these people on all the time that they finally got themselves debt-free. They do the debt-free scream over the town. How long did it take you to do? We paid off $200,000 worth of debt. It took us, on this much income, it took us 2.5 years to do it. You're not going to wave the wand and get rid of this immediately. We'll talk about a little bit of that as we do. But imagine eliminating all of your short-term debt and then keeping it eliminated. You're no longer going to finance cars. You're no longer going to put things on credit cards. You're no longer going to go down to the furniture store and sign up for the, extended payment plans and all those kind of things as well. What that would do for you in your budget is give you an immediate 20% raise. Imagine going to work tomorrow. The boss calls you into the office first thing in the morning. You go, uh-oh, now what did I do? And he says to you, you're doing such an incredibly great job here. We love you. We appreciate what you're doing. We're just going to give you a 20% raise. Imagine doing that tomorrow morning. Yeah, woohoo, right? Okay. Now here's how 99% of people would respond to that. They would call wife at home and say, honey, get on your best dress, we're going out to dinner tonight. And you know that car we've always wanted? And you know that vacation we've always wanted to take? And it wouldn't take 3 months before your budget would, and you would be right where you are today financially, because you wouldn't take that opportunity to take that 20% and actually start building wealth and security financially in your life. That's what people would do. And you see it happen all the time that way. I've said this hundreds of times. It's not the amount of money that we have that is the issue. It's how we handle what we have. And that's why God laid down a percentage for giving and not an amount. Because, let me say it this way, everyone has 10% of what they have. Why? I can't afford to do, I can't afford to tithe. I can't afford to save. You have 10% of what you have. Now, your 10% might be $1.50, where somebody else's might be 100,000. But what you have this amount, and percentage-wise and behavioral-wise, we can do this in our lives and set this up regardless of how much money we have, because it's built upon those principles. It's not built upon amounts, it's built on principles. And if you got a 20% raise tomorrow, by eliminating your debt, you would be able to take that. That frees up a whole lot of things in your life financially. You would now have the liberty to be able to do some things you couldn't do before. You would have the liberty to be able to continue to tithe and maybe grow that a little bit. You'd have the liberty to, instead of putting 10% in savings, maybe now you're going to put 15% in savings. That begins to multiply exponentially and grow as well. And now you may be able, as it says in your notes there, to go after your mortgage at this point in time. Okay? So now take it this way. And again, people, you get a young couple, grows up, they're 25 years old, they get married, they buy a house, they sign a 30-year note, right? And so you're 5 years into this and you're thinking, what do you mean eliminate a mortgage? Well, by the time you start getting toward this age, that becomes a reality. Becomes a reality. It was a reality for us before this age, okay? So what happens when you eliminate the 20% cancerous thing in your budget of this credit cards, car payments, whatever it might be, you eliminate that and get out of that habit, behaviorally change yourself to the point where I'm not going to go back there again, and give that liberty to your budget. Now you can do a few things. God takes care of his children, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with you going and enjoying something from time to time within your means. That's why I said if you look at this summary budget thing, that's a person who's living within their means. And an individual living within their means, dude, can you imagine if you went to Malawi or Haiti or even Belize and said to somebody, here, you're going to have a $5,000 a month budget to live on? They would be stinking, filthy rich. And you are stinking, filthy rich. But we compare ourselves to Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, and that's why we think we're poor. So with that 20% cancerous thing gone, done away with, the surgery has been performed, chemo, whatever you want to call it, that's gone, eliminated. You are in full remission, 100% cancer-free from that debt aspect of your life. Then you can go after the next debt aspect of your life, which is your mortgage. And again, if you've listened to Dave, he's got all those baby step things in there, and mortgage, paying off the mortgage is one of them. So You get rid of the 20%, then you take that 20% and start attacking the mortgage with it, at least or with a portion of it, if not all of it, and it doesn't take very long to start accelerating that to the point where the mortgage gets paid off. Okay? I'm going to talk about this a little bit later on. Don't ever refinance your house, but we refinanced our house a few years back on a shorter term note, not on a longer term, on a shorter term note. At the time we refinanced it, we had 19 years to go. We refinanced it on a 10-year note. It obviously increased our payment a little bit, but doing that saved us $43,000 in interest. Okay? You go after your mortgage like that and get that paid off, I cannot tell you, okay, I walked into our mortgage company on my 60th birthday with a check in my hand for my final house payment. That was the best birthday present I've ever had in my life. I cannot tell you, just aside from the from not having to make that payment anymore, it's not about math, it's about principle and about behavior. I cannot tell you the freedom and liberty that it gives you to know that you walk in the door of that house, and as long as you make your tax payments, no one can take it from you, okay? And again, that's another issue I'm not even going to get into, okay? By the time my mom passed away, her tax payment on her house was twice as much as their original mortgage was, okay? Of course, now we're talking, they bought the house in 1959, so, okay, understand. We know things increase over time. But when you get to that point, now you have a 45% raise. Imagine going to work tomorrow and the boss says, you've been doing such a good job, we're going to give you a 45% raise. Oh my goodness, yes, okay? Imagine the freedom and liberty that gives you to be able to really do some things now with your budget and with your finances to honor God, to take care of your family, to be a blessing, to build wealth, to leave a legacy behind with your heirs. I mean, come on, folks. That and doing that again puts you in a position to there's this sweet spot of life. Every stage of life is wonderful. I've got little grandkids and I love them. A 3-year-old that's just, you want to put them in the freezer and leave them just like that, right? Okay, we got a little 1-year-old, you want to put little Sophie in the freezer because she just, you want you to stay just like that, okay? Then they become teenagers, okay? But every phase of life has its benefits, but one of the phases of life that has a tremendous benefit is when you get to this 50 to 70 sort of range in there where you're old enough to have figured out a few things in life and still young enough to do something about it. And if you're in that window of time, and it takes time to get there, we understand that, but handling budget like this, get to that window of time when, and be freed from debt and be freed from a mortgage. Dude, you can accomplish some stuff then, all right? Now, that's how to prevent the budget cancer to start with, is to get rid of that 20%, use that to attack the 25% of your mortgage, and get yourself to the point where you've got a home free and clear and no debts left. So how do you treat budget pre-cancer? This would be somebody who is not upside down in debt. You're not seriously, you have debt, but you don't have, it's not choking the life out of yourself. You don't have bill collectors after you every day, okay? So you use what is called the debt snowball. That's in Dave Ramsey's stuff, where you take your debts and you list them in order, the smallest one first. Financially, mathematically, sometimes that isn't always the best way to do it, but behaviorally it is. Because if you go after the smallest one first And let's say you've got, I'm just throwing numbers out, let's say you've got $100 to put toward debt and you got 5 debts. They all have a $10 minimum payment. So you make a minimum payment on these 4, that's $40. Now you got $60 to put to this small one. And once you get rid of that, then you got $70 to put to the next one. Once you get rid of that, you get $80 to put to the next one. See how that works? And you snowball that to get rid of the debt that way. And the reason you go after the smallest one first is because it gives you a victory quickly. You can get behaviorally conditioned, I'm going to get out of this. If you go after the big one first, it takes so long to get there that you run out of steam and run out of gas. That's why he recommends that you do that. So if you're in one of those situations where you've got this 20% credit cards, car payments, things, whatever it is, and you want to attack it, go after it that way, okay? Now, how to apply chemo to the aggressive budget cancer. Maybe you've got something that is beyond the 20% situation, okay? Here's where I stepped into people's lives quite often at that time, okay? These are things you should always do, always, when you're working off your debt. And the first thing on the list is to be proactive. If you've got a situation where you are upside down in debt and people are, you can't make minimum payments, or you're just barely making minimum payments and you're not keeping up with it, or bill collectors are knocking on your door, or you got something sitting out there like that, be proactive with it. This is your problem, not somebody else's. This is your responsibility, not somebody else's. It's your money. Take control of this situation yourself and work it out. Now, I'm going to take you behind the curtain for a little bit. I'm going to give you the psychology of a bill collector, which I was for a number of years. The psychology of a bill collector is this. You've heard this old joke about a couple of guys that were out in the Serengeti or whatever, and the lion was stalking them, and that one guy said to the other man, I don't think we can outrun that lion. And the other guy says, I don't have to outrun the lion, I just have to outrun you. Right? Okay? That's the psychology of a bill collector. He knows that the lion is out there. I knew when I was collecting money from somebody that I wasn't the only one collecting from him. That the reason they're in that situation is because they've got a whole bunch of them that are trying to knock on their door and collect. Because if they had the money to pay me, they would. Most people. Okay? But they don't. And so now they've got this much money and they've got this much bill collectors standing in line trying to get in front, trying to get their money. And all I had to do was get in front of them. I had to create urgency and pressure and intimidation and abuse sometimes in people's lives. And again, this goes way back. Laws have changed some since that point in time. But we did some pretty weird things from time to time. Let me just put it that way, okay? But I had to get in front of the other people that they owed money to. And I had to do that in such a way because I was standing there at the time or I was on the phone at the time. I had to be instant, immediate, on the spot, right now. I don't care about these other people that sometimes it would be, how much money you got in your checking account? I'll take it. I wanted to get in front of everybody else. And in order to do that, I'm the aggressor. I'm the one that's chasing you down all the time. I'm avoided at all costs. I can't tell you how many times, hundreds of thousands of times, no, probably not, but thousands of times in which I'm trying to chase somebody down and they're running like crazy to try to get away from me, right? Call somebody, business guy on the phone, is Mr. Smith in? Who's calling, please? And I've already tried them 5 or 6 times by this point in time. And my answer would be, does my answer to that question determine whether or not he's there? I had to get aggressive and abusive sometimes to to get to where I needed to get in front of everybody else to collect the money from them, okay? If you initiate the contact to a debtor, to a creditor, I mean, if I'm sitting there at my desk and my phone rings and it's one of the people who owe me money and a guy on the other line says, hi, this is John, and we owe you $1,000, and I've worked this out, here's what I think we can do. We can get you $100 a month for the next 10 months. They called me. I'm like, dude, you're in. That's the psychology of a bill collector. Now you're in the driver's seat. Now you're dictating the terms that you can manage and handle, and when you agree to do something like that, do it. Follow through, okay? So be proactive to this. If you owe somebody some money and you know they're trying to chase you down, pick up the phone, call them. It will put you completely on the other side of this, and it will, I promise you, the guy on the other end of the phone will be appreciative of the fact that you called him, and he'll be more than willing to work with you in whatever situation that it is. Second thing you do is you turn off the spigot. If you're in a situation like that, do not add to your debt. You cannot get out of you cannot get out of debt by borrowing money. Let me say that again. You cannot get out of debt by borrowing money. Turn off the spigot and then find a way to acquire some extra income. Go take a temporary job someplace, a little part-time thing, and when you do, if you do, is there some temporary income that you do? Take a little part-time job down at, the grocery store Sackin or Home Depot or wherever it might be, someplace where you drive it, deliver some pizzas, as Dave says, whatever it is. When you do that, if you're going to do something like that, you take absolutely 100% of that money. Don't tithe it. What? No, don't tithe it, don't save it. You take 100% of that money and apply it to your debts, to the point when you get that cancer taken care of, because it's urgent. Get that cancer taken care of, and then once you're on top of that situation, quit the job, go back to normal life, okay? Those are some things you should always do. Things you should never do when you're trying to work off your debts. Don't ever be bullied by a collection agency. I've never worked for a collection agency. I say never. I did for about a week when I was between jobs and whatever. I have worked with many, many different collection agencies over the years. They will come and meet with me and say, how can we help you collect your bad debts once they have been written off? So I understand what these people do as well. The only power a collection agency has is intimidation. That's all they have. A collection agency cannot do anything to you that the original company you owed could do to you. In fact, they can do less. Do not be bullied or intimidated by a collection agency. That's what happens. Oh no, it's XYZ collection company. They're going to put me in jail. No. Okay? Don't be bullied by those people. Okay? We had, in some of the companies that I worked with, a couple of companies that I consulted for, we set up an in-house collection agency with a different name. It was a guy sitting at the desk next to me. When it got to bad debt, this guy would call them and say, hi, I'm with XYZ Collection Agency, and I'm here. The intimidation of that third party was enough to get them to pay, and it was a guy working for the same company sitting right next to me. Okay? Now, if it's a collection attorney, that's different. If you get letterhead from, Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, all right, the law firm that is going to take you, that's different. You're going to have to engage that situation. I don't say you don't engage the situation with the collection agency, but don't be intimidated by them, okay? And if you get in a situation like that and you need some help with it, come talk to me, okay? I lived there for a long time. I know how to deal with those people, okay? Never give a creditor access to your personal accounts or information. Now, this wasn't in the day that I was in the business because things have changed, but now today it's like, well, if you'll give me your bank account number, we'll just go ahead and take $100 a month out of it. No, 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 no. Do not give anyone access to your personal account or information, because a lot of bill collectors, again, the only thing they want to do, I don't have to outrun the lion, I only have to outrun you. And the only thing they're trying to do is get ahead of all the other collectors, and you give them access to that information, some of them will go in and pull everything right away. I've seen it happen. I had a colleague one time, when I was collecting in the alarm business, he found out that his client was in the hospital. He went to the hospital to collect from him. The man owed the debt. I mean, it's legit to collect the money when somebody owes you a legit debt. But that's what bill collectors will do. They will do those kind of things. Don't give them the access to that information. Why? Because this is a behavioral thing. If you're in one of these situations, it's your problem, it's your money, it's your responsibility. You drive that bus. Don't let somebody else drive it. Don't use a debt relief service. You see these advertised on television all the time, okay? Another situation like that. A debt relief service cannot do anything that you can't do yourself. You pick up the phone, you call the people that you owe money to. That's what they do. You can do that. And when you do that, you'll put the debt person, you'll put the creditor on your side to work with you on this, just like they do. And then you end up paying a fee to these, and some of these debt relief services are unscrupulous as well, okay? And they want you to pay them a fee up front to do this. And the big thing is this. You have a problem here, and you contact a debt relief service to try to help take care of that for you. You have taken your problem and handed it to somebody else and went, call me when you have it solved. And you don't learn the stench in the nostrils of being in debt. You didn't work out of it yourself. You let somebody else work you out of it. And you know what will happen to the average person who does that once they've worked themselves out of that? You know what happens? They go right back into debt. If you get into that sewer yourself and you smell it and you're knee deep in it, you won't go back. Don't use a debt relief service. And in this one, never, never, never refinance your house. When you elect me president, because I run every 4 years, okay? I have yet to get a vote, but when you elect me president, one of my first executive orders will be to outlaw anyone from signing any mortgage note that extends their mortgage beyond the date they first signed it. We were taught in the finance business about this sweet spot in rolling loans. If you got a 36-month loan and I roll that over at 10 months and refinance it for another 36 months, I've doubled my interest take from you. At 10 months on a 36-month loan. So here's what the home refinance people will tell you. Oh, you can pay off all your high interest credit card debts. Oh, you can free up, you can save this much money. You can take that vacation you've always wanted. You can take cash out of your home to buy that thing you've always wanted. And what they do is they extend that date later on at the end. Remember the example I gave before? We refinanced our house on a shorter term and it saved us $43,000. They want you to refinance your house. So you're 25 years old, you sign a 30-year note. And that means 55, right? So if you just stay with that, you'll have your house paid off at age 55. Well, at age 35, you've got yourself in debt and you want to take that great vacation. So here comes A1 Mortgage to tell you that, oh, you can just do this. And you know, and refinance this house, and they'll refinance it on 30 years, and then they'll refinance it again, then they'll refinance it again, they'll refinance it again, and you're 80 years old with 30 more years to pay. Don't ever refinance your house unless it's a shorter term and or a lower rate. You could do it that because that saves you money. Once you sign that mortgage, and I would encourage you, if you're buying a house, to put it on a 20 or a 15 if you could. But if you got to put it on a 30, put it on a 30. Maybe later on, as life grows and you get some more income, you can take care. You can refinance it again or whatever. But don't do that. Do not do that. That is a scam. It's legal. It's not the scam likely guy that calls you that wants you to wire money because your grandson is in jail in Mexico or something. That's not one of those illegal scams. It's a legal scam, but it is a scam. Do not. I would put them, if I was in charge, I would put those refinancing people out of business. Yes, out of business, okay? A few other basic principles, and then we'll get done with today, okay, because I'm running out of time here. Debit cards versus credit cards, there's pros and cons for each. Usually if you're in just your daily expense type of things, the best thing to do is use cash, because when you pull these things out of your wallet, you know what you're doing. It's visual in front of you at the time. It's just a fact of life that plastic money spends faster than actual dollars that are in your money, in your wallet, okay? So use cash for that kind of stuff, because it's a behavioral thing. I see what I'm doing. When you like this all the time, you don't see it until the bill comes in. Oh no, how did I rack up that much over the month, okay? Debit cards have their pros and cons. With a debit card, you can't add to your debt. It's either there or it's not there. You can only spend what you have. You have to be diligent to know. I can't, if I'm using debit card, I have to know how much is in there. With a credit card, you don't have to. You can just go wherever you want. The con for a debit card, the cons are this. If your debit card gets hacked, they have taken your money and now you got to go fight to get it back. If your credit card gets hacked, you can just say, that's not me, and now it's up to the company to fight to get the money back, okay? That's one of the cons for that. And of course, with a debit card, there's some things that are a little harder to do, as it says. Credit cards, the pros are that you have a little time. You can just do, again, that's dangerous. Be careful with that. Another pro is that it keeps your credit score active, and Dave would argue with me on that. Dave Ramsey would argue with him, you don't need a credit score. There are some companies that run a credit check on you and look at your credit score if they're going to hire you, because it's an indication of your character, right? There are insurance companies that base rates on credit scores. Okay? So having an active credit score is not a necessarily evil thing to have. Dave Ramsey would disagree with me, but it's not an evil thing to have a credit score. Another one here is on the hack. The con is the temptation to carry the balance, which is significant enough that if you have that problem, if you can't pay it off every month, don't use a credit card, okay? Because we'll just make the minimum payment this month and we'll take care of it next month, and pretty soon you're in cancer again, okay? Another one of the cons is this: when you use the credit card, it puts you in a position of being upside down in your debts. And without getting gross on it, just understand that when you charge, if you're on a credit card and you can't pay it off every month, and you go to the restaurant and you charge that meal on that restaurant, the upside down means the value of what you have on the credit card, the amount of money you have here is much less than the value of the item that you have there. How much value does that meal have 6 hours later? Okay. Student loan problem. I can solve this with one sentence. Everybody's got a credit limit. Who in their right mind would walk into a bank at 18 years old and say, can you give me $250,000 unsecured and I have no job? So work with your children to be intentional about that plan. I know this is one of Dave's baby steps in there to fund college. College is not necessarily for everyone, but if your kids are going to go to college or whatever, work with them. We told our children, we will help you with it, but we're not going to pay for it. Because when they put something into it themselves, they get more out of it, okay? Both of our adult grandchildren have graduated college debt-free, okay? Just an awesome thing to do. Be intentional with that, and don't get yourself in a student loan mess. All right, I got to end up right there because we need some time. Larry? Push, not pull. Yes. Very briefly, push, not pull with your checking account means this. When you push the money, you have told your bank, send this amount to this creditor on this date, and the bank pushes it out to them. When it's a pull, you've given that company the access to come into your account and take what they want at the time, okay? Avoid the pull at all costs. There are a few companies like insurance companies that will not do business with you unless they can pull money from your account. But if you set up an account with somebody, with whoever it is, and they have access to come into your account and take the money out, they're in charge, right? They can come in and take whatever they want at whatever time they want, and now you have to fight to get it back from them if it's the wrong amount. So set up push where you're driving it from your bank account rather than pull where they're taking it out as often as possible, okay? All right? Lord, thank you for Jesus and his love for us. Dismiss us with your blessings. Give us good time and service today in Jesus' name. Amen.